Welcome to Mysteries in Crime. I'm your host, Melissa Thompson. With the worldwide attention on Gabby Petito, her case has brought attention to other missing persons cases. As Gabby's parents asked the media and viewers to put the attention we put on Gabby's case towards others, it is what Gabby would have wanted and what her four parents wanted us to do. So let's turn our attention today to Daniel Robinson. He is a 24-year-old field geologist who works remote parts of Arizona in the desert. Daniel, who stands at 5 foot 8 inches tall and weighs around 150 pounds, he has dark brown eyes and black hair and was born without a right hand, went missing on June 23, 2021. On that day, Daniel had arrived at work at 9 a.m., a job site near Sun Valley Parkway and Cactus Road. When Daniel arrived at the site, he met with his coworker, Kenneth, who told Buckeye police he was acting strange. This would not be the first time police heard the story, as well as Daniel's family reported the same thing of him acting strange. According to the police report, Robinson was saying things that did not make sense, like asking Kenneth if he wanted to go home to Phoenix to rest. After about 15 minutes of this, he waved goodbye and abruptly left the work site where they had been talking. Kenneth then contacted Steve, the project manager, who said no one from the company had heard from or seen Robinson throughout the day. Around 3 p.m., Kenneth was made aware that Daniel had not been located and was not responding to texts and or calls from work and family. At that point, Ken started to look for Daniel in the desert. Ken said he followed tire tracks, he said, were Daniel's near the work site, where Daniel had last been seen. The tracks were heading west, which Ken continued to follow in order to find Daniel. As he drove further into a, quote, extremely large desert area, police then searched the area for hours with no success. Buckeye Police Department instructed Daniel Robinson II to check his son's social media pages on June 24, 2021. Because you see, Daniel didn't go without 6 hours without telling his family and friends where he was going to be because of working in remote locations. Robinson II confirmed to police that all the photos on his son's Instagram had been deleted since his disappearance, which was strange indeed. According to the police report, multiple of Daniel's friends and family members and a waitress at a Waffle House. If you don't know what a Waffle House, it's a chain of restaurants where it's almost like a little diner, and one of the things they're famous for is waffles. He visited 2 days before he disappeared, reported odd behavior leading up to his disappearance. Most commonly, he was described as being, quote, off. On that same day, he had an emergency, but neglected to answer any of her calls in response, according to the police report. He had told his sister that he had an emergency, and he wouldn't explain to her why. The day he went to the Waffle House, he had told his sister this. Daniel's sister also said one time he went over to her apartment and sat in silence for 30 minutes before getting up and leaving without saying a word to her. His dad told police that in the weeks leading up to his disappearance, Daniel had told him that he met a woman and was in love with her. His dad found this strange since his son didn't appear to know anything about the woman. Quote, a coworker told law enforcement that Daniel had mentioned something about a girl, specifically about wanting a woman he liked and couldn't have, but overall wasn't making sense when talking about her, end quote. According to a police report, Daniel had made contact with a woman prior to his disappearance. Apparently, Daniel was her Instacart delivery person, and that was his second side job after being a geologist. and she invited him into her home when he arrived with her delivery because he seemed friendly, she told police. He had dropped off alcohol to her and her friends, and because he seemed so friendly, she decided to invite him in. Normally, she said she wouldn't have done this, and she said, looking back in hindsight, it was probably the wrong thing to do. And looking back at the behavior of what happened with him, she really regrets this decision. After exchanging phone numbers, Daniel showed up at her home unannounced a few times. He then told her he loved her, according to the police report. She reported this to police, and they explained to her about stalking behavior and how she could put a restraining order against him. She exchanged a few more texts with him after this. She asked him, though, to stop contacting her, and eventually he stopped. A Jeep belonging to Robinson was found in a ravine on July 19th, 2021, about 4 miles from where he was last seen, according to CNN. Now, this was a very strange scene, you guys. The Jeep had been turned over, like it was laying on its roof. Airbags had been deployed, and clothes were strewn about in the desert next to the Jeep. His phone and wallet were left there. The police department said the car had sustained, quote, significant damage. Again, Robinson's cell phone, wallet, keys, and clothes were all found at the scene with his car. But police said foul play is not expected, but Robinson's family thinks otherwise. Now, his dad, Daniel's dad, David Robinson II, told CNN's Brianna Keilar, quote, "It didn't sit right with me," end quote. Evidence showed that Daniel was wearing a seatbelt at the time of the car crash. Now, interestingly enough, Daniel was supposed to be alone in the Jeep, but according to the PI that David had hired, he said that the computer is reporting that something was in the passenger seat, and in order to record that on the computer, it has to weigh at least 50 pounds. And he said that both Daniel and the passenger had seatbelts hooked in, but there was no sign of Daniel at this accident site. Jeff McGrath, who is the PI, an accident reconstructionist, also looked at this case and has been working on it ever since. He told NBC 12 News, quote, "This looked like a stage event to me. After the airbags came out, somebody then turned the ignition over at least 46 more times. There's an additional 11 miles on the car, so that tells me the car was driven around after the crash," end quote. That's extremely, extremely strange, especially about how the Jeep was left. Buckeye Police Department said that leading up to finding Robinson's car, they had conducted 4 ground searches and 2 aerial searches. After finding the car, they conducted 2 more ground searches on July 21st, 2021. Police later found a human skull near the site of the crash on July 31st, 2021. But after having the skull tested for DNA, confirmed it did not belong to Daniel Robinson. Daniel's father said they have found remains belonging to 5 or 6 individuals since that point through volunteer search parties, and they've had to call out law enforcement at each and every time they discovered another human. He said, quote, "It has been over 2 months with no leads or evidence towards Daniel's disappearance, as well as failed tracking of his vehicle and phone, GPS location that could determine exactly what happened that day," end quote. Robinson II said on a website dedicated to finding Daniel, and that's Help Find Daniel Robinson. The family has offered a $10,000 reward for information that would help leading them to find Daniel. They have also set up a GoFundMe that has amassed $143,943 as of October 7, 2021. And he needs this money because David, who does not live in Arizona, went there and has been staying there because he wants to find his son. He is asking for the public's help because his son is not in the news like Gabby Petito. On September 23, 2021, Robinson II told CNN that he has sympathy for the family of Gabby Petito, but wishes his son, who is black, had as much national attention. And I agree, David, 100%. David told CNN, quote, "You wish you lived in a world where everything was equal, but it's really not equal. It's hurtful to see the case involving Petito, who was a young white woman, receive nationwide attention while he's been searching for his son for months," end quote. And that really is sad, and really why I wanted us to look at this case and see if we can help find Daniel. Now, to me, it definitely seemed like Daniel was suffering before he went missing. According to family, coworkers, friends, he definitely was, to me, experiencing some mental problems, maybe an illness of some kind. I mean, we don't know all of his medical background except to know that he was born without a right hand. And despite that, Daniel grew up and he accomplished so much. So what was going on in his life that would make him leave the job site abruptly, and especially to a job he loved? Now, the Robinson family is asking anyone with information relating to Daniel Robinson. They want you to call Buckeye PD at 623-349-6400. And the Robinson family has set up a website, and it's called pleasehelpfinddaniel.com. And I wanted to read you something that David wrote on there. Daniel has an innate passion for adventure and is known to travel on opportune moments. However, he always communicates with friends and families on his travel plans. It has been over 2 months with no leads or evidence towards Daniel's disappearance, as well as failed tracking of his vehicle and phone GPS location that could determine exactly what happened that day. A missing person report has been filed that same evening on the day he was last seen, and we have utilized all avenues law enforcement could contribute. Our next goal is to continue pushing forward to finding Daniel. This means that we are reaching out for support from all that wants to help. This is a personal website set up for Daniel to give up-to-date information. And it's signed, "Thank you, David Robinson II." As of October 7, 2021, the GoFundMe has raised $143,943. But as we all know, PIs and searches get very expensive. And this family, if you can contribute, really, really could use the money. And then the family has set up a petition for us to sign to get law enforcement to put in more research and helping to find Daniel. As of October 7th, 63,538 people have signed this petition, including myself. They are trying to get to 75,000 signatures. Please, you guys, let's get those signatures in there. This is a free way to help. And, you know, it's really sad to see that law enforcement had 5 or 6 missing people, and it was Daniel's father and the volunteers helping to find Daniel that found remains of these 5 or 6 different people. They're not even totally sure how many people's human remains they have found. And Daniel, why would he leave his cell phone, wallet, his clothes? I mean, is it possible he received a head injury from the accident? Absolutely. That was one of my concerns right away because it seemed like a pretty bad accident. However, when the PI is looking at it and he's saying that the Jeep was driven another 11 miles, that seems very, very odd. So is it possible that Daniel was in the passenger seat that day and somebody else was driving? Like after he left work, did he meet up with somebody else? Does he have amnesia and has no idea who he is? I mean, even though that's rare, it does happen, you guys. And I have worked many accident scenes, and, after going through that trauma, the person is shaken up, they have injuries, like their adrenaline is kicking in. It's very traumatic. And it seems like Daniel was definitely going through something before he went missing. But you guys, the thing is, we are not keeping Daniel's name out there in the news. And I support everybody that has a loved one missing and or murdered or something that bad has happened to them. We are not supporting these families by only concentrating on one case. Gabby Petito's dad said to the press that it's up to all of you and us as viewers to help these families keep these victims' names out in the public. Daniel Robinson was a well-accomplished young man, and yet the news doesn't give him or his family much time at all. We have been spending all of our time on the Gabby Petito case, and we definitely should keep Gabby's name out there. Absolutely, especially what she went through. But you guys, there are so many people that need our help. We need to make sure the press gives these other victims and their families the time that they need and the resources they need. Law enforcement has not been there for the Robinson family. And for them to find other human remains, that's traumatic. Very, very traumatic. And I'm just really feeling very sorry for David right now. I wish I knew how to reach out to him and do everything I can to help him. I will be making a donation to the GoFundMe page. I think that it's important to support families that need us. I hope all of you are having a wonderful, wonderful week. And please, if you can, please share out Daniel's missing persons flyer. It is at pleasehelpfinddaniel.com. And if you could please, when you go to that site, the change.org petition is there, as well as the GoFundMe link, if you can donate. I would really love it if you would subscribe to our little community and keep these families and their family members' names out in the public. We need to find what happened to Daniel Robinson. So please, if you could share out his picture, I would be most appreciated. And I know that Daniel's family would really appreciate it. We can bring closure to these families. We could bring people home if we all took a second to share out this information. Well, I will see you guys very soon. I hope you guys are having a beautiful week. Take care. Bye-bye.